You're listening to Out Loud and Live with J.C. Alvarez. Television heartthrob John Wesley Shipp has enjoyed both daytime and primetime success. The two-time Emmy-winning actor has made groundbreaking moments in television, both in soaps and on the hit show Dawson's Creek. But fanboys and girls all across the country know him best for his role in the 90s live-action series The Flash, where he brought to life DC Comics' favorite Scarlet Speedster. Now, as a new generation prepares to move into the fast lane, John reflects on his time as the fastest man alive and shares his thoughts on passing the baton. This is part 2 of my interview with actor John Wesley Shipp.
So I didn't quite know. I was a little thrown third season, when the tone of the show changed. And the parents' role over the course of the 4th season was diminished because Kevin was the really strong voice behind keeping it an ensemble.
Correct.
After the 4th season, the kids were going to college.
They were growing up.
They were going up, and they were going to leave Cape Side. And they let all the adults' contracts expire. And all they wanted from me and Mary Margaret were 6 episodes each. And I thought, you know what? It's going to happen. We're going to be standing in the background at Parents' Day at college holding Lily, the new baby, and waving. I said, this has been such a rich, good, sort of, as you say, seminal experience in the evolution of how stories about kids were told. I don't want it to. I don't want it to. So when they, of course, we all had to renegotiate our deals, and I set my price really high, figuring that they would not meet it. And I was fine. 4 really good seasons. I was ready to go back to L.A. Mm-hmm. I get a call from Paul Stupin in L.A., who took over the show. He and Kevin were co-executive producers. Kevin now gone, and he said, would you meet me for a cup of coffee? So I'm thinking, wow, I wonder what this is about, because I had let it go. I had released it. And he, long story short, we were having coffee, and he said, we're in about midway through shooting the first episode, the WB shut us down, shut the show down. I said, why? He said, they don't like the story that we have no story. He said, I know you've been sort of increasingly unhappy and, as you've been given less to do. He said, justifiably so, but we were wondering, came up with this idea. If we give you the money you're asking and we promise you 2 terrific scripts, will you come back and kill the character? Well, I was like, whoa. It's one thing to leave the show. It's another to kill a character that you've... And
is that attractive to you as an actor? Because I would imagine if you're being told we're going to give you a really great send-off, that must be appealing, especially after evolving a character for so many years that people have come to love. To give him a good send-off, was that appealing to you?
Well, I didn't really know. By that time, end of 4th season, I wasn't really sure how invested they would be. But I figured if they give me the money I'm asking, I'll take it. You know what I mean? But you know what?
Did it for the Benjamins.
They came up with The Long Goodbye and The Death of Dog. They came up, I'm not aware, and I'm not aware of everything, obviously, but I am not aware of a character receiving a more respectful and endearing send-off and affectionate farewell than Mitch Leary was. I mean, some of the best work that I did, and I left in the 3rd episode of the 5th season. My entire a little over 4-year tenure there was in those last 2 episodes, and it so caught the audience off guard, that it paid off big time. Sure. It spun Mary Margaret off into a story, the death of her husband, Dawson. They created it so that there's a circumstance. He had drunk all the milk, and I had to go get milk, so it was his fault. He killed his dad. Then he was leaving film school to follow Joey, and his dad disapproved. One of the last things he heard his dad say was, "I'm disappointed in you, but no, I'll always love you." All he heard was, I'm disappointed in you, and I killed my dad. Yeah. So
which, of course, is a scarring thing for a child, and it really changed the way the character progressed to the end of the series.
But it was a confirmation for me that I had made the right decision, because I can look back on those 2 episodes now and say, it really made me feel like the previous 4 years had been about something.
Another show that you were on that had a huge following. Fantastic following. On the huge success of Tim Burton's Batman film, which starred Michael Keaton, there were rumblings that started circulating about another DC Comics character that was going to come to television.
Right.
That character was the Flash,
Right.
which you created that role, that original role on television. You were one of the actors on the short list of actors that were up for this role. But when they came to you to offer you the Flash, what did you think?
Well, first of all, they didn't come to offer me. They came with an offer for me to audition.
Okay.
And I had just come from New York, and I'm, whether delusional or not, I had pretensions of being a serious actor, and I thought, okay, I'm not sure that this is really what I want to do. I was thinking of the old Spider-Man series where they stood off camera and they threw rope. And that was, I'm like, right. And then I was thinking about these gold ears, and I'm thinking about this running around in a pair of red tights. And remember, I started my career running around in a
those
Speedo,
red tights, John.
running around in a Speedo, singing "You Needed Me." The last thing I wanted to do was start my primetime career running around in a pair of. They said, I talked to April Webster, multiple Emmy award-winning casting director, and she said, John, read the pilot. Right. That's all I want to say. She said, do you think I would be attached? I said, I don't know anything about comics. I said, who is this character? You mean Flash Gordon? A question that I've taken great
which would have been
umbrage.
Great as well.
I've taken great umbrage when people have said that to me, since I'm like, no, the Flash. Get it straight? No.
Well, I mean, it's of course, everyone knows now that you played Barry Allen, who is he's a crime scene technician, and of course he gets hit by lightning in his lab, and he's endowed with super speed.
Right.
And becomes actually one of the most powerful and most popular superheroes in the entire DC mythology. You just take my word for it, John.
Awesome.
But I mean, it's like even with this, we're talking about when you're doing the show, it was the advent, if you would, of the whole superhero genre really going mainstream.
You said it was interesting because Flash, of course, was in development years before it went on.
Right.
And it's like the whole Tim Burton that he gets credited with, the whole modern sensibility that Howard Chaykin, our story editor, everybody all together was sort of, there was a consensus forming around, we need to rethink how we're telling these stories. There's much more depth to this pop art form than has been displayed. So it's not like the Flash was imitating Tim Burton.
Absolutely.
They were all this consensus was this sort of creative flowering of a new way to present superheroes was forming.
Because the Flash is not Batman. He's a very different kind of character, and you do have to approach him very
Barry
differently.
Allen was sort of a lovable. It's like his dad says that he goes off to answer a call, and his mom says, "Be careful." And the wall, she's like, "What's he gonna do? Stub his toe on a footprint?" It's like,
But he does become the Flash.
Yeah.
And goes on.
But how he became that, when I read the script, I realized, okay, they're taking this seriously. I said to April, I have pretensions of being a serious actor. She said, that's why we're coming to you. We want you to audition. We think you're right for it, and you take your work very seriously. She said, and when I read that, it's not Hugh Hollywood hero. It's not someone going in, I'm going to save the day. It's the first thing he does when the exploding rack of chemicals is, I don't want to know from this. I don't want this. Get rid of it. He goes to Tina McGee. And it's only upon the death of his brother and his whole cradling his dead brother in his arms that he decides, okay, fuckers, I'm going to assume this. But it was a revenge motivation. And I loved that the relationship between Tim Thomerson, who played my brother on that show, and I was really sorry that left, because that's a delicate thing. He was the blessed son,
right?
And
exactly,
Barry was sort of the unblessed son, but still
he was
they had a
masked
tremendous
hero and
love for each other,
and really was kind of like always trying to like win his dad's admiration.
But imagine if you're the unblessed son and suddenly you had these kick-ass superpowers and you're standing over your brother's grave with your dad, and I tell him, I'm going to get the people who killed Jay, and he says, don't point a gun unless you have a bullet in the chamber. Yeah. And then I say, it was one of the most memorable moments for me in the pilot, I say, I have the bullet, but I can't tell him what it is. You can't tell, you have it. You're so much more than you can ever let your dad know. Yeah.
In the in league with so many television shows, well, actually so few television shows that were successful in the genre, The Flash is considered one of the better superhero television shows. It was very special effects heavy. The scripts were very complex. Even the villains were, the Flash's rogues gallery were even treated really, really differently, like real nemesis. You actually had some really great actors who portrayed some of the villains on the show. That must have been a lot of fun.
Well, the whole concept of the show very quickly went through a metamorphosis,
Right.
because really what they wanted, they were ahead of its. Danny and Paul were ahead of their time.
Sure.
Because what they initially envisioned is more what the first couple of episodes were, which was basically a CSI show
Right.
with a superhuman element, which they then later on did. I never saw an episode of it. I think with the Superman show. What was that called?
Lois and Clark
No,
or
no,
Smallville?
Smallville.
Oh, yeah.
And
Which redid and revisioned the Superman mythology
right.
for its generation. Yeah.
But they didn't want to do a rogues gallery. They did not want to do a supervillain a week. That was not their original concept. They promised me I would not be saving a kid from a burning building on page 6 of the script. Okay,
Why
so
does that sound so bad, John?
they said if we have our way, PTAs will be calling with complaints every week. He said we want to make
child
it dark.
endangerment
We
rules,
want it
yeah.
edgy.
Yeah.
Of course, by the 4th script, I think I actually saved a boy from a burning building. I think it was page 15, so technically they didn't lie. But I went to them and said, "What is?" But they did. It did evolve. There's so much in, as you know, in bringing a television show. You have to please the studio. You have to please yourself. You have to please the studio, and you have to this team at the network. And everybody's got to have a synthesis on what it's going to be about.
Well, it's also when you're dealing with, I mean, and of course we're now cut to an age where the superhero genre is a huge $1 million market for Hollywood, but to the fans who you brought the Flash to life, I remember seeing those first pictures of you in the uniform and how much the fans appreciated that. Oh, this is going to look legit. It's going to
look legit. They said,
yeah.
John, we're spending and this was 1990. Remember, we were spending $100,000 to build 4 suits.
Right.
I came to regret that later, but at least I wasn't. I was not running around in a pair of red tights, which would have been worse.
Well, the suit left little to the imagination, John, to be quite honest. Christian Bale, the actor who plays, of course, Batman in the contemporary reimagining of The Dark Knight that Christopher Nolan did, he got a lot of slack for affecting his voice to play Batman. Did you have to do, or did you feel you had to do something different when you were in the cowl?
Gratefully, I had very little dialogue in the suit. What there is, I can tell you to this day, makes me uncomfortable. And I was constantly saying, don't make me speak in the suit. If they had electronically altered my voice, if there was some way that the voice could have been more altered, because I mean, once we're with Jonathan Brandis, in Child's Play, and may he rest in peace, I'm giving this kid advice. I mean, and he's living in Barry Allen's home. He does, my actor's suspension of disbelief was strained a bit, and I, quite frankly, I felt a little ridiculous talking in the suit. You know,
Really?
I did. Pike. I'm gonna get you. Here I am in a, $25,000 worth of foam latex. I don't know. That made me a little uncomfortable, but we managed it okay. I tried to alter the voice, but very little, because I thought, the audience is going to have to suspend disbelief a little bit, because you can overdo it. And I won't say any more about that by trying to make it distinct.
Yes. One of the things about the show that also made it really, that endeared it to the fans, was Amanda Pays, who plays your colleague on the show.
McGee,
Tina McGee, who is your superhero accomplice, if you would. The chemistry between both of you was so great that she kind of replaced one of the more loving characters in the comic book Flash's life, which is his love interest of Iris. Do the two of you keep in touch? Because it's one of the things that fans really they like, when the two sort of like sweethearts on a show are still friends in real life.
Well, yeah, we've done conventions together. If you want to go on anybody can go on my Facebook page. Now, there are a couple of fan pages. They're not mine. I don't know who put those up. But my personal Facebook page, there's pictures of Amanda and me in Dallas. It was either 2011 or 2012. We went and appeared together at that convention. I just did a film that her husband was involved in, and I wanted to talk to Corbin. And so I contacted Amanda to say, what about these people? What was Corbin's experience? So yeah, we do keep in touch, and it's she always would bust my balls. You know, she called it taking the piss out of. You know, it's like she's a very funny lady. She's.
Do you like the because you do the convention circuit and you have been up close with the fans?
No.
Is that weird experience for you when you
it's
have
not weird at all.
When the fans are like right there?
No, I think it's the same thing sets in about convention experience, although it's being so legitimized that people are having to do it now as part of their contracts, as you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, but like in soap operas, it sort of became, oh, I'm really too good. This is my day job. I'm really, to denigrate, whatever.
And those
I did,
fans are relentless. I mean,
whatever,
daytime fans are like the most dedicated.
Whatever I did, I would not play down to the role. Whether it was Eddie Ford in 2010, I don't have that separation. They say, I see soap opera acting workshops. Says, what's that? You play the given circumstances truthfully. And if they're heightened circumstances, the characters are heightened. But anyway.
Well, Eddie Ford, speaking of Eddie Ford, he was one of the more popular characters that you just recently embodied Eddie Ford in daytime. You've played a superhero, you've played the Great American Dad, and then you played this really off-kilter guy that people literally, your fans loved hating him.
They really loved hating. Well, I took a look at the opening scripts and I was like, this guy is not going to last on camera for 5 minutes.
And he was a character that was on which soap opera they played?
One Life to Live.
One Life
Eddie
to Live.
Ford.
Right.
And they had hyped him as the father of these 3 sons and the abusive father for months. And
genetically blessed sons had
genetically
blessed
I've had
dad.
me some pretty kids. I've had me some pretty kids, let me tell you.
Had a good run there,
Good
Shipp.
gene pool. But anyway,
So
Eddie Ford.
Yeah, this character was just like.
I was like,
fun for you though.
I'm going to take the acting book, and I'm going to throw it out the window.
Because he's a villain. You did that because you're playing somebody
No.
that was really.
When I had played my earlier villains, there was I could find the wound,
Right.
and I could play the wound,
Right.
but I couldn't find Eddie's wound. There was nothing redeemable as it was written. So I said,
Was that fun?
You know what? I'm gonna free myself. I'm going to forget about substitution, personalization. And Susan Gammy, costume designer, gave me the right take on it. She said, John, the way I have to look, because the way daytime was shot, but by the time it was 2010, we were no longer doing an hour a day. We were doing 16 scenes from 14 different episodes, and kitchen scenes, they would all be constructed. And so you didn't always know where you were coming or going. And she said, John, the way I have to look at it is it's another day at the circus. So I threw the acting rule book out the window. I started ad-libbing. They supported me. I said, the only way I can do this is if I shy away from it, it's death. I have to run straight at it and try to find what's darkly humorous and off-kilter. In fact, some of the fans were offended at the beginning because they were expecting a real slick Clint Buchanan, played by Jerry Van Orn. And I was like, no.
Which we've had so many of those characters in daytime.
I come in jeans, and one fan even accused me in those first scenes with the son of being unintentionally funny. And I thought, I guess that's about the highest compliment when you're playing
a
something
psychotic
for comedy. They think you're unintentionally funny. They don't think that I knew that certain things that I was doing were comedic.
Yeah.
Of course I knew. And I'll never forget, I threw in a line once at the end. My youngest son, who Eddie Ford called the little bastard, and he knew it was his kid. The minute the kid punched him, he knew it was his kid. But anyway, leaving the room where I've just had a thing with this kid and his mother, I stop at the door, and he was shorter than Eddie, shortest of the sons. And I said, "Oh, I'll tell your little girlfriend, when she's ready to supersize, she know where to find me." And well, the cameraman fell off his bench. It's like they were like, "Now I know that was not in the script." I said, "No," but they gave me a lot of really good stuff in the writing, and then they supported me. Frank Valentini is one of the best executive producers I've ever worked with in that regard.
Well, it looks like lightning is about to strike twice, and the baton is being passed. The announcement has been made that The Flash has been recast and is returning to television.
Really?
Yes. The CW just introduced him on their hit show Arrow.
I know.
And Grant Gustin, which is he's not an actor that people kind of equate with playing a good guy, has been cast as the new Barry Allen. He, of course, was introduced in Glee as a really venomous character. How do you feel about someone now coming in and taking up the red tights?
22 years is long enough. I mean, I've had sort of an extended life as The Flash because it came out on DVD in 2006, and I've been doing the conventions, and it's been great. Interacting with the fans has been wonderful. Conventions are not the nightmare that they have been portrayed as.
Does that surprise you, the fascination that people have with these kinds of characters? These sort of like modern day mythic characters as we're experiencing now in popular culture. Does that surprise you that your Flash is still resonates with fans?
I mean, it is serious. I mean, these fans are very serious about. They're serious collectors. They're serious. They really know the stuff inside and out. It is a whole world that I was actually humbled the more I learned about it. I was almost glad I did not know anything about it, because I took everything that I needed from the truth of the moment of the script and I played Barry. I felt my job was to play Barry, to get the audience hooked in with who this human being is, so that I've said this before, but when I went into the suit, the audience came with me.
Right.
And then we were all looking from inside the suit out. And I think that's the fun of it.
I don't think anyone else fit in that suit but you, John.
No, there was no room.
And
they wouldn't want to have been in there anyway. Let me tell you, it was pretty sweaty, pretty stinky in there.
Which is really great advice for Grant in a way, because he actually doesn't have the advantage that you have, that you didn't have someone who already played the role. You kind of like, it's going to be very hard for him in today's culture to kind of go into it blind, because there is so much out there.
You know what the first thing I thought when I saw Grant? I thought, he's aerodynamic.
Yes, he is.
This is the modern sensibility. Now, back in the 90s, everything had to be big muscle. But let's face it, we had to cut down the suit from if you'll watch, we pared it down as it went on because it just didn't make sense. I thought he's very aerodynamic, the way he's built. It's a good look. There are striking similarities between Grant and I. People were complaining, why is this guy playing a superhero? He just got through playing a villain. Well, both my Emmys were as a psychotic, would-be rapist and a girlfriend abuser, woman abuser. We were both born in Norfolk, Virginia. How's that?
There you go.
For a coincidence.
We're serendipitous.
And there's one other thing, but I've forgotten it. And I read it. I went, wow, that's kind of
he's on his own after that.
He's on his own.
Good luck, Grant.
No. And listen, I wish him all the best. And in fact, I've said, because people have written in and people are, I mean, these fans are very serious, but I said, come on, how long have we waited for another incarnation? Yeah. How many times have hopes been gotten up?
Yeah.
There's going to be a Flash movie. It's been shelved. This time, this guy's going to play it. It's been shelved again. I said, you want a Flash series? You better get into Arrow and support this kid. Yeah. Sorry, I mean, no disrespect to Mr. Gustin. You better get in there and support Grant.
Right.
Because they can say they're going to spin off, but you need to give him and them support so that the series actually materializes.
Yeah. Would you be open to returning to Central City?
Would I be what?
Willing to return to Central City if an opportunity presented itself?
I mean, if it was a right fit, you know what? I'm not holding my breath. I mean, in fact, I so wanted the audience my audience not to go in critically judging Grants, that I put a series of things saying that let's get behind him, let's support him. And I stopped because people began to say, well, you need to be on that show. And if you're not on that show, and I said, okay, now it's looking like I'm campaigning to be on that show, which I'm not. It's
become also a television tradition with the modernization of these characters. When they tell them, they've always played homage to the force that has come before. So you never know. You might jump back into the Speed Force.
I don't know. If that happens and it works, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's great. And I wish him well.
Hey, but you're not sitting still. You've actually got a couple film projects that are in the works. The more recent one that's getting a lot of buzz is called The Sector. Mm-hmm. And it's a quiet, what I like to call quiet science fiction film, like something that isn't a big Hollywood spectacle with R2D2 and C3PO running around and hovercrafts. It's more like it's more of a character piece, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a post-apocalyptic vision of this world that's melted down with diseases and global warming and what have you. and it's sort of like carries Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's along that, but very interesting characters: Lance Henriksen, Richard Tyson, Kayla Carlisle. I'm very Josh Ridgway wrote it and directed it, and it was a blast. We shot it in Dallas in October.
Do you prefer the film project to serialized television?
I wouldn't say. People always ask, and I was also fortunate enough to be in the Tony Award-winning
Because
Broadway
you've been doing a
play
lot of
Dancing
movies.
at
You've been doing a lot
Lunasa.
of movies lately, and you know.
And they said, which do you like best, theater, television, or film? I said, I like moving between the three.
Very good.
You know, because they call for different things. You know, very
different demands on you
things.
as an actor. You mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they call for very different things, and I would go into that, but then we'd be here all night. Exactly what they are.
Well, I've got time. You've also played the president.
Yes,
project
I
recently.
am waiting for. I'm psyched about this. It's a project, IMDb it. It's called Golden Gate. It has Vivica Fox, Eric Roberts, John Rhys Davies, Montel Williams. I play the president of the United States, a really good guy, visionary president at a time when the war in Afghanistan is dragging on, and his popularity ratings, and people are down on the country, and he wants to find a story to inspire the nation. And that's the A storyline. This young kid whose father is lost in Afghanistan, whose mother's in an accident, which he finds out goes to the hospital, and he begins to lead his team to a state soccer championship for the first time. And the president goes, okay, we're not going to play politics on this. We're not going to do it. We're going to find the father in Afghanistan. I want them there at that game. And through the course of how it's perfect for what's happening in our country right now. It's like, can we just not drop all the bitterness and all the differences and come together around a story that can be inspiring, and remember that we're Americans and that we're all citizens of the same country. It's a beautiful script. It's and I'm waiting for I guess the producers to decide which road. Do they want to go straight to a distribution deal? Do they want to go the art film circuit or what? But if they got it on paper, it was really a special script.
Well, you can certainly bet that your fans will be waiting with anticipation for these projects. Your fans are very loyal and do mean a lot to you, and it's really exciting to them that you have been able to color your career with so many different roles, and that they've been able to kind of like follow your evolution as an actor along that career. That must really speak to you as an actor. Yeah.
It's interesting. You touched on it earlier about my fans. It's like, and I don't really use that word. I like because it's like I don't know. I feel funny about that word. People who admire my work or who followed my career, is that Guiding Light. We were there at the beginning of the youth revolution, so we had young fans. And then I went to The Flash, which had a young fan base, and then I went to Dawson's Creek, which had a young fan base. So it was like a new decades. At one time, I looked around, everybody was staying the same age, and then I'd walk by a mirror. I was the only one aging. But the good
aging very well, mind you.
Thank you. But the good point about that was that, there was successive waves of people not from the same decades that I've been able to perform for. I've been honored to perform various roles for.
And therein is the biggest compliment. John Wesley Shipp, thank you so much.
Thank you
for bringing us into and hey, from a fanboy like me, you'll always be the Flash. I'll always imagine running around in red tights. Stay tuned as we continue to follow John Wesley Shipp and his upcoming new projects. And also get ready for the return of The Flash in 2014, with Grant Gustin reprising his role of Barry Allen, as seen recently introduced on the hit show Arrow. And of course, a very special thanks to my friend and fan favorite, John Wesley Shipp, for stopping by and bringing us up to date on all of his going-ons. Stay in the know with Edge on the Net, the internet's largest network for LGBT news and entertainment. Download the iPad app and get the digital magazine featured every month. Edge on the Net. Visit us now. Out Loud and Live is now also available as a podcast on iTunes.
Please hang up and try again.
Send us your questions or comments to thrillseekerhq@aol.com. This is JC Alvarez, and you've been listening to Out Loud and Live.
This is a Thrillseeker HQ presentation. Get in the HQ. Go to www.thrillseekerhq.com.